So we need better strategic roads. We're going to need urban transport in and around cities, which at the NIC we've constantly focused on, not just between the cities, but the need for people to get in and out of their cities to their work. We are way behind Europe. We only have one city, I think, in this country where you can get into the centre in less than 30 minutes, and that's London. So improving the urban transport systems in our other major cities around the country. We need to have, as I say, better strategic roads. That doesn't mean great big long new motorways. It means removing the bottlenecks in the system.
This week we're going to talk about reindustrialization. Andy Burnham's promise. What is it? Is it possible? Joining us now to discuss that are Sir John Armitt, who was the government's infrastructure czar. Hello to you.
Good morning.
And Andy MacNae, who is the Labour MP for Rossendale and Darwin, and now the convener of the Parliamentary Reindustrialisation Research Group that is made up of around 50 MPs. Hello to you.
Morning, Adam.
And Andy MacNae, what does reindustrialisation mean in your view?
So in a way, it's very simple. It's making more things in more places, which is pretty obvious if you're going to get good growth in every postcode, which Andy's talked about. But I think it is really about having a sense of ambition in doing that. So, we've had many industrial strategies in the past, but it's about doing it at a scale that will make a difference. So as a group, we're setting a target of 1 million new jobs to make reindustrialisation really meaningful. And that means it's going to be delivering jobs in every place, in places like Rossendale and Darwin, in places like Makerfield, in places like Cornwall, and so on. So it's something that's going to work in every part of the country.
Sir John, there is, of course, a competitive advantage. Things can be made cheaper abroad. That's why a lot of jobs have gone out of this country. Does reindustrialisation as a goal make sense to you?
Well, yes. I mean, I think we've got to be competitive, but you'll find that many organisations will say one of the biggest brakes on being competitive at the moment is the cost of electricity. And if you take the chemical industry, which sort of their products go through just about everything that you can imagine, they are being hamstrung by the cost of energy and electricity. And that prevents them from being competitive. So if we're going to be really competitive in the future, we've got to get a grip of our energy costs.
You mentioned the chemicals industry. What other areas are you talking about? Because I suppose to some people, going back to the 70s, reindustrialisation might mean opening up the mines and expanding steelworks.
No, I mean, if you take the government's own industrial strategy, they've got a 10-year plan at the moment, which focuses on advanced manufacturing, for example, new materials, which are going to be the future, particularly in places like aerospace, clean energy, of course, which everybody's familiar with. The creative sector is seen as being one which Britain has benefits and advantages in. Defence, of course, is going to see enormous need for expenditure and investment in smart investment. That's all manufacturing, a lot of it in the UK. And then, of course, there's the whole digital sector. So there are a number of sectors in which manufacturing in one form or another is necessary, and we need to be competitive.
And do you see 1 million jobs there, Sir John?
I don't know what the number of jobs would be, but I would argue that jobs is the foundation of having a successful society. People need to be able to get jobs. It doesn't matter what sector it's in. Create jobs, and you start to create wealth, and you start to create opportunity.
Andy MacNae, if you try and distribute this to every constituency, won't you end up effectively having the taxpayer subsidise non-competitive activities?
No. Well, first of all, I think if you do it at scale, things happen in every constituency anyway, because if you like, one thing crowds out another thing. And a lot of this is about moving away from a sort of city-centric orthodox of the idea that you just drive growth through cities doing well and it somehow trickles out. And some of that does mean you've got to be more, proactive. And that means, the state or investors intervening. But that doesn't mean subsidy. It means enabling things, allowing things to happen. You've got a good example in Manchester, actually, with the Manchester Good Growth Fund, which utilises local government pension money backed up by some Manchester money and some government money to de-risk it. And that's created a £2 billion fund to invest in that area. And one of the challenges is how do you take that sort of approach and make it work, again, everywhere? But I'd also argue that simply an approach that says, some places are too hard to do, too difficult to create jobs, too difficult to create opportunity. It's just leaving places behind as they've been left behind for 40 odd years now, and we can't do that anymore.
What's your answer to the dramatically more expensive energy in this country?
Yeah. So there's a whole set of factors you have to get right if we're going to address reindustrialization, and input costs are one of them. Energy costs are a big input. Longer term, we're transitioning to more stable and cheaper energy. That's the longer term. But we can't kill the industries in the meantime. And so, whilst this is not speaking for government or speaking for the group, and there's a lot of work to be done on energy policy. For me, decoupling transition and infrastructure costs from energy bills is a likely way we're going to need to go to move that into general taxation. Because it's not about a net zero transition per se. It's about 40 years of lack of investment in our energy infrastructure, in our grid, that we're having to reinvest in now. But arguably, those costs should be borne by general taxation, not by businesses or individuals' bills.
And Mr. MacNae, does your vision of reindustrialisation mean squeezing every last drop out of what we got in the North Sea?
Every last drop, what do you mean? You're paying a fortune for that last drop. So there's a point at which it simply becomes economically, madness to carry on. I think anytime you're doing a transition between industries, you need to manage that transition. And so there is a perfectly good argument for either Rosebank or Jackdaw, for instance, as part, being continued as part of that transition to smooth the path. But in the end, we need to get to a point where we've got domestic, stable energy, renewables, where we manage, where we control the costs, where we control the supply. That's what we need to get to. But there is a transition to be managed, and we don't want to damage industry on the way.
So, John, where do you think, in terms of energy generation in this country, where should we be concentrating our efforts, and are we doing the right thing now?
Well, we're torn, aren't we, between wanting to get to net zero as quickly as possible, but at the same time, use the resources we've got, be less reliant on overseas supplies of gas and electricity. In fact, we import electricity from Europe, gas and oil as well. We have our own gas and oil. We should let the private sector get on and exploit that gas and oil. They won't spend money when it becomes too ridiculously expensive to spend it, but they will take advantage of that oil and gas where they can recover it in an economic way. They estimate that at least 30% of what we need between now and 2040 could come from the North Sea. So it would be sensible to get on and use that. We are going to use gas in the system for the next 20 years. We cannot be totally reliant on renewables over the whole of the next 20 years. So we need to get there gradually, and we should optimise our own resources whilst we get there.
And John, what about infrastructure? Because that is where government can spend large sums of money, but not always too successfully in this country, although you've been involved with success. What should be our infrastructure priorities as part of reindustrialisation?
Well, our infrastructure priorities for industrialisation are clearly energy is absolutely the fundamental one, but also we need better strategic roads. We're going to need urban transport in and around cities, which at the NIC we've constantly focused on, not just between the cities, but the need for people to get in and out of their cities to their work. We are way behind Europe. We only have one city, I think, in this country where you can get into the centre in less than 30 minutes, and that's London. So improving the urban transport systems in our other major cities around the country. We need to have, as I say, better strategic roads. That doesn't mean great big long new motorways. It means removing the bottlenecks in the system. We're going to need to expand our ports over time. But a lot of this is done by the private sector. The private sector will get on and invest if in fact it can see consistency and stability of policy, and that has been the thing which has been most missing for the last 20 years. In fact, you get to the point where you wonder whether a long-term infrastructure strategy in this country is possible. When we change government policy so often, we change ministers so often, there's no consistency. We drop in extra taxes, for example, at a moment's notice, and expect the private sector to sort of hoover all this up and just carry on regardless. they need to be supported. And government can do that with a consistency of policy, which is what has been lacking for so long.
Andy MacNae, is that perhaps a paradox that the government wants reindustrialisation, but the way it might get it would be less heavy-handed, if you like?
No, I think there's an enabling part of it. So I absolutely agree. There is no shortage of appetite to invest. I sat in a room with people representing £3 trillion worth of managed funds. And what they were saying is, we want to invest in the UK, but we don't, know where the opportunities are, and where we can see the potential for opportunities. Government needs to do more to de-risk it. And that might be doing things like putting in the transport infrastructure to enable the investment. It might be specific place-based de-risking. But the government is there as an enabler of those investments. It's not getting in the way. It's not being displacing that investment. It's enabling it, creating the conditions for it. And on transport infrastructure, an example in the north is the Northern Powerhouse Rail, a 45 billion connection between Leeds and Manchester. But if that's just a transport link, we're missing a big opportunity. If we think about that as enabling a growth corridor, and think about all the small towns and areas alongside that route as things to be connected into that prosperity, then you start to create something that becomes very attractive for investors, because they can see a big picture there that starts to look very interesting.
Andy MacNae and Sir John Armitt, thank you both very much indeed.